Tonight, an era ends in the skies above Invercargill. We investigate an unusual conservation program along the Catlins coastline. And visit an inner-city school where a fifth of the children speak English as a second language. Good evening. Landowners in parts of central Otago are starting to calculate the price they paid in trees for this year's severe winter. Exceptionally heavy frosts early in the winter have left dead trees in their wake from Roxburgh through to Ranfurly. Michael Lynch has the details.
The frost and snows of May were utter bliss for Central's ice-starved curlers. They had the best season for years. Likewise, the bikers had splendidly seasonal conditions for their annual brass monkey foray to a Turihua in the Ida Valley. But today, the valley is showing the ravages of a winter that came earlier and harder than most can remember. Whole shelter belts lie dead and dying, a mute reminder of the week of temperatures that plummeted to a bone-chilling 27 degrees below zero. 40-year-old pine trees look like a fire's been through them. Some may live, many may die. Tree scientists are scratching their heads over the advice to give farmers.
Wait a while because nothing can be done in the short term anyway until next planting season, and we'll be looking at all the plantings under our control later in the summer and offering specific advice then.
It's little consolation though to farmers who've lost precious shelter belts. They're wondering what will happen next winter.
Advanced Underwriters, an Invercargill-based firm under investigation by the Commerce Commission for its high finance rates, has made offers to at least 2 Dunedin clients. It's offered one woman a reduction in repayments of 15%. But Law Society President Colin Withrell says he's sceptical about the offers. He says Advanced Underwriters hasn't said exactly what the new finance rates are, and clients should consider very carefully before accepting. A familiar sight has vanished from Invercargill skies with the last flight of the Argosy, the plane that's carried on an air freight service which started with DC-3s more than 30 years ago. The Argosy, which Safe Air operated for Air New Zealand, has been replaced by a truck. Peter Cruikshank met the plane on its last flight at the weekend and its road equivalent today.
An era ended for the purpose-built freighters as the last 10 tonnes of freight arrived in from Christchurch and further north. It's been coming in 3 or 4 times a week, depending on whether it has to go to the Chatham Islands that week or not. The aircraft, very few of which are left flying, will continue to operate under contract to Air New Zealand, but will fly in the north. This Saturday flight brings to an end revenue for the Airport Authority, which has just placed hefty landing fees on commercial aircraft. The new truck and trailer service leaves Christchurch at midnight, drops off goods at Dunedin, and this morning arrived at 8 o'clock to give the same service times as the aircraft at the same price, but with increased frequency. The new 5-day service, Tuesday to Saturday, will look a little different when it's completed in a fortnight.
The truck will be painted with the Mount Cook insignia on it. The unit will be broken up. Half of it will be left in Dunedin, and the front half will come on to Invercargill.
But concern expressed by exporters of perishables, like salmon, oysters or crayfish, is that their air lifeline is threatened. However, Air New Zealand says those types of goods will go on domestic jet flights to connect with Japan and North America.
Plastic liners turn up in more and more containers nowadays, but not many have to be as tough as those going into parts of Dunedin's ailing sewerage system. They're to strengthen the old earthenware pipes, and as George Burke discovered, the procedures carried out without the Australian contractors having to dig a single hole.
Some of the sewerage pipes are nearly 80 years old and in need of attention. This system's used where access isn't good or the sewer very deep. It involves squirting a resin sleeve into the pipeline under pressure, then bringing water in the huge kettle to 80 degrees Celsius and pumping it into the system where it circulates for 3 hours. At the end of that time, the resin sleeves cured and formed an unbreakable pipe inside the old one.
Well, it's one continuous thing. There's no joints, so you can't have drop pipes or any leaks in it, so it's one complete joint.
The final touch is to send a television camera along the pipeline to find the spots where house connections have been covered by the new pipe. Then it's simply a matter of putting the robot router down to cut through the liner and everything's back to normal.
A group of people interested in saving a delicacy from the Catlins coastline have started a unique cooperative project. The delicacy is power, and the people concerned want to make sure it'll be there for their children and grandchildren to enjoy as much as they do. Kim Hurring reports.
To get a good feed of power these days, you need a wetsuit and snorkel. But these divers can remember the times when you could just wade into these waters in a pair of shorts to pluck the tasty mussels off close rocks. This is just one of 4 experimental reserves set up along the Catlins coastline to allow power to regenerate to their former numbers. The unique aspect of these reserves is that they're totally voluntary, and they've been set up not through government order, but through cooperation of local groups who just want to see the power come back.
I've seen so many resources, crayfish, the blue cod deterioration, so many deterioration of things that I sort of feel that being a local, I wanted to do something to protect so the future generations have a chance to get a power like we did.
Even more surprising is that among the groups that have come together on this project are some which make their living on the resource. The only problem with this voluntary reserve is that it is voluntary. In fact, on the day we were at Long Point, a commercial fishing boat was taking quite a catch on board. But they were spotted by a conservation officer, and a gentle warning from a committee member who swam out to their boat was enough to deter them from taking any more, on that day anyway. It's hoped that respect for the reserves will grow through word of mouth.
If that is respected by everybody, instead of the odd one coming down and taking more than their share, I'm sure the resource will stand for many years yet.
Have you seen people taking more than their fair share?
Oh yes, I have witnessed that, yes. But locals as well as outsiders. We're all guilty, but I think the resource has got to the stage where we've got to some way protect it, otherwise they'll be a thing of the past.
The legal fair share for one person is 10 power that are over 125 millimetres long. And once you've caught them, there's a real secret to cooking them. Trust me, they do taste a lot better than they look at this stage. Although some people do eat the guts and all, and the tough locals here will even eat them raw. A good beating is essential to soften the mussel. Then you dip them in flour and cook them quickly on a barbecue. These people are hoping that getting the power beds re-established will allow amateur divers to get their fair share of this chewy, sweet delicacy.
Kim Hurring with a cooking lesson thrown in for good measure. Now the temperatures, and it's quite a range tonight. Half Moon Bay had rain at 3 o'clock and 12 degrees. Invercargill cloudy, 13. Gore partly cloudy, 14. Balclutha drizzle and 12. Dunedin was overcast with 16. The highs today were in Palmerston where it was sunny and 19, and also 19 in Oamaru. Kura was sunny with 16, Ranfurly cloudy 13, the low today in Queenstown raining at 8 degrees. Rain also in Wanaka and 9, and Te Anau had rain and 11 degrees. And for tomorrow, Dunedin 16 and Invercargill 14 degrees. While Southerners debate the pros and cons of living in a multiracial society, some inner-city schools in Dunedin are getting on with the reality of it. At High Street School, for instance, 1 in every 5 pupils has English as a second language. Kathy Graham visited the school to see how it's coping.
School assemblies are often a pretty formal affair, but at High Street it's always the occasion for a sing-along. For Principal Stuart Holmes, like many of his pupils, English is a second language. His native tongue's Maori. In the classroom, taha Maori has become a natural part of the teaching program.
Kia tātou tātou e Craig, ne? Kia tātou tātou te tūtahi o tātou. Kia ora. Kia ora no tātou.
Stuart Holmes, in fact, speaks 5 languages fluently, including Chinese. That ability is quite an asset in a school where 1 in 5 children on the roll is Asian.
We go to lunch now.
About half a dozen of the current new entrants are Asian, and it's quite common for them to arrive at school not understanding or speaking a word of English. Marianne's Cambodian. She was born in a refugee camp and arrived at school about 3 weeks ago. Son's also Cambodian, but after just 2 terms, her English is already so good, she acts as interpreter for the newer ones. The school lacks the resources to give these 5-year-olds any formal language instruction, but in spite of that, they quickly pick up what's going on.
On Wednesday, he ate through 3 plums.
Sandy Lee in the grey's Chinese. Lok Ting Lam to her left is also Chinese, but was born in Peru. Neither of them are really speaking English yet, but on past experience, it won't be long.
You help them a bit more, but they learn from the other children really more than from us. They copy what the others are doing, and they're very quick to look at what their next door neighbour's doing. And you'll find they talk first of all to the children, to their friends, before they talk to you.
That friendship and cooperation's in evidence throughout the school. Everywhere you look, there are children helping other children. The system's formalised once a day when the young tutors take over. They're paired up with the new arrivals for a 20-minute period of intense one-to-one instruction.
I love what do you wear on your hands? Keep warm. Gloves.
The tutors take their role very seriously.
And hide it all up.
Good boy.
They encounter the child with absolutely nothing to say except their own name, and then within about 2 months they feel that it's, and it is largely due to them, that this child is suddenly communicating and saying whole sentences. And it carries right through into the playground. Everywhere they become a real unit.
It's probably credit to the tutoring program that this is a school without racial tension. But like any inner city school, it does have its problems. And coping with foreign students with very little backup doesn't make it any easier.
We find it very, very hard to cope because we had no special training or anything like that. I think anyone who takes on a school with as many children who are having problems with learning English as a first language, we should have some sort of training, surely.
But staff have had to learn to cope. All the departments given the school is Judy Lee's 10 hours a week. She has 24 children currently in her program. Do you feel happy about speaking English now?
Yes.
And what do you speak at home?
Sometimes Cambodia, sometimes Kiwi.
What about you, Tina?
Well, when I first started school, I felt all funny and difficult when I first came to school, and I was scared that and Samantha was my only friend that when I first started the school.
Friendship, it seems, is the key to the success of the High Street program.
On Twilight Phone this evening, you'll be able to talk about unemployment. Call 778888 right now. Until tomorrow, good night.